More than a week after the election, Megyn Kelly is now revealing some of the threats she says now President-elect Donald Trump unleashed against her this past year. It apparently all started when she aired a segment that Donald Trump did not like, and this is what she told CNN's Anderson Cooper.
You say in the book that he threatened you.
He did. So he was very angry that I'd aired that segment. And, you know, I said, look, I did you a favor. You know, nobody was even telling the other side of that. They were just accepting this as a relevant story. He didn't see it that way. And ultimately, I said, look, Mr. Trump, you don't control the editorial in the Kelly file. And that was it. He said, that's it. You're a disgrace. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. And then he said, oh, I almost unleashed my beautiful Twitter account against you, and I still may. Michael Cohen, who is Trump's top lawyer and an executive vice president with the Trump Organization, had retweeted, let's gut her, about me, at a time when the threat level was very high, which he knew. And Bill Shine, an executive vice president at Fox, called him up to say, you got to stop this. Like, we understand you're angry, but this is, you know, she's got 3 little kids, she's walking around New York, really. And he didn't much care. And what Bill Shine said to Michael Cohen was, let me put it to you in terms you can understand. If Megyn Kelly gets killed, it's not going to help your candidate.
I don't think it would have made any difference, but some, in reading the book, have criticized you for not revealing all of this, that conversation you had with Trump before, where, you know, he talked about unleashing his beautiful Twitter on you, kind of holding on to that until the book came out. Mm-hmm. Do you think it would have made any difference?
No. I mean, do you think if the Access Hollywood tape didn't make a difference, and the 12 female accusers didn't make a difference, and the Khan family and Judge Curiel, none of that mattered, that he mentioned his beautiful Twitter account was going to be a game changer? You know, my approach in this was, I wanted to be honest, so I had revealed that I had received some death threats and that I had a guard, and, you know, that the level was getting a little dangerous. But I didn't want to make it any more about me. You know, Trump kept trying to make the story about me, and the story was about him and ultimately Hillary Clinton, but in the early days, him and the other Republicans. I write in the book, in Settle for More, that I felt like a human being who had been dropped into a shark tank, and there were passers-by looking in, slightly horrified at what was going on. And all I wanted to do last year was get myself out of the shark tank.
Here to discuss all of this is our senior CNN media correspondent and host of Reliable Sources, Brian Stelter, and Bill Carter, a CNN media analyst. Guys, great to have you. Bill, I want to start with you. Yeah. One of the journalistic questions is why, when she had her much ballyhooed sit-down with Donald Trump, should she, when she said, let's talk about us, should she have said, you've threatened me?
Yes.
Your people threatened me? I mean, why didn't she go there?
I still don't understand why she didn't go there. If this was all going on in the background, and I believe her, I think she's very sincere, this is pretty emotional stuff, she didn't say to him in that opportunity, listen, your lawyer retweeted this, there's been threats against me, I think this needs to be called on this, you need to stop this. It was an opportunity that she passed on, and I don't think she's explained why. I'd like to hear from her.
I think that
I'd really like to hear from her.
I think that what she has said generally, not to that specific question, because nobody's asked her that specific question as far as I know.
Yeah.
But she said, I didn't want the story to be about me.
I get that, but here you're in this position, and it's weighing on you this way. Plus, you have him in a one-on-one interview, and it was a very soft interview anyway. It seems to me it was incumbent on her to say, I have an issue I really want to raise. I think it would have been journalistically sound. It's not really about her then, it's about him intimidating the press.
It's withholding something you know to be true when you were talking to someone who was running for president. But Brian Stelter, you know, is there a defense here for Megyn Kelly?
I think, first of all, what's most important is that she was a canary in the coal mine, that she had a sense, maybe more than any other journalist, about how severe Trump's intimidation tactics could be as a candidate. And we should pay attention to that now that he's the president-elect.
Well, shouldn't we have paid attention to it when he was the candidate?
Yeah. I think we did, and I think many other journalists have also experienced that kind of harassment. Allison, you were tweeted at by Donald Trump. Lots of other journalists were. Megyn Kelly, though, seemed to be singled out by him for various reasons, and also by his aides. I thought that Michael Cohen part was really important. You know, Cohen last night on Twitter was denying this, saying she's lying. He was retweeting people calling her a psycho. He was actually doing the same thing he did before, which was to retweet people who were very critical of her. I just think it was a sort of a reminder about the severity, and I think we knew most of it, but we didn't know all of it before. I would say, to her defense, though, we did know a lot of this we did know about the security guards and things like that beforehand.
But I just think someone should ask her now in all the interviews that she's doing, why did you not bring that up when you had a chance one-on-one with him?
I mean, look, I think that we all try to make these calculations, and they're tough ones, about we do know things about the candidates that we don't always share, and we do know things about how the candidates have treated us.
Yes.
I was blacklisted, but I tried not to make that by Donald Trump, but I tried not to make that the story. I accept that she didn't want to be the story, but the only wrinkle in that is that she did have that moment where she said, let's talk about us.
Right.
True.
So at that moment, then the door is open, and let's really go there.
Well, because you're not talking about us. If she's not bringing it up, they're not really talking about us, are they?
Clearly there was a huge elephant in that room that was not brought up.
And that's a fair point. She was trying to make peace, but at what cost, basically?
Was she looking
and
for future access? What was her strategy at that point is what I want to know. Why go there without confronting that? Did you want to make sure you had an open door to him in the future?
And is it wrong? Is it wrong to do things for future access?
No, it
to
isn't
the possible
necessarily.
president?
Not necessarily, but I'd like to hear her explain that. I'd just like to hear that.
This gets to a broader issue about the Trump presidency. Access journalism versus adversarial journalism.
Of course.
A lot of what we're going to learn about a Trump presidency is going to come from the outside. I noticed Politico just brought in a former Page Six gossip writer to cover the White House. Why? Because they're really good at getting anonymous sources. So I think that's going to be really important. Yes, interviews are great. Interviewing Trump is great. But adversarial journalism, being on the outside, is going to be really important the next 4 years.
You bring up access, and I actually do not think this next issue is in any way about access. We're talking about the press pool that covers the President of the United States and also the press pool that is supposed to cover the President-elect of the United States. Twice in the last 8 days. He's been President-elect for like 8 or 9 days, and twice Donald Trump has ditched the press pool that's there to cover him. 2 nights ago at a restaurant, he went out to a steak place. They did it after the press aide, so Donald Trump said he's not going out.
Right.
You know, it wasn't honest or they didn't know, but the bottom line is the press should have known where he was going. And the reason, Brian, is so you can be there in case something happens to the president-elect, in case something big happens to the country. This isn't about adversarial journalism. This is about presence.
I don't care if he had French onion soup. I don't care what kind of steak you ordered. But I do care if it seems like he's hiding, not from the press, but from the public. The voters who supported him and the voters who didn't. That's why this matters. And of course, it also matters for the mundane reasons of what is he doing every day and the more important reasons about crisis.
And it's more important with him because he has set a standard already that the press is scum and the enemy and all this. And he's announcing that he has disdain for them if he's going to cut them off. Now, having a stake is maybe too much is being made of this, and he's still president-elect, and things can be ironed out.
True.
But there is obviously a history here of him having real hostility toward the press, and where is it going to go is a fair question to answer.
That is the question. So what if he says, you know what, I'm changing that. I'm not going to have a protective press pool when I'm president. I don't want to do that. Then what?
Well, there is some power that the White House Correspondents Association does have. The White House, they can then say, then we are not going to cover said events. We're not going to put a camera inside the Rose Garden for this. We are not going to
Would they ever do that? I mean, he's the president. Would the press ever say, I'm not going to cover the president's events?
It does seem really unlikely. And the president does have quite a bit of power. And Obama clearly distanced himself from the press a lot, too. And they complain severely about that. It's going to probably be raised.
I think he should do the opposite and be the most accessible president.
Should.
It worked in the primaries. It could work very well for him as president.
Great point. Bill, Brian, thank you.
Thanks.
What is your take on